As we know, Veterans Day is coming soon this week, and JP is very interested in sharing a poem in tribute to those who are veterans and those who have survived war. Today we are having a wide expanse of emotional experiences with more yet to come, and thank you for holding all of those together. So I'm very pleased to welcome JP.
I am a 14-year veteran. I served 4 years in the Marine Corps, and I served the other 10 in the Army. I was infantry and military intelligence. Yes, I know oxymoron, right? We got out in 2005. I know next weekend is Veterans Day, but I know a lot of you plan things, right? So just thought we'd get a jump on the game here a little bit. There's a poem. I have a couple poems. There's one in Christmas time, if Karen lets me read it. There's a good one. It's the Santa Claus in it. But this one, I know it's Veterans Day, so that means the vets that are alive, that are current. Memorial Day is for people that have passed and gone. I want to make it very clear real quick, is that serving peacetime and war, a vet is a vet is a vet from all 5 branches. And, you know, that 5 branches, you're like, what's the 5th one? Coast Guard. It doesn't matter what you did, what you did or when you did it. The more we train in peace, the less we bleed in battle. So, hoorah and hooah. So, all right. So if I am going to make it through this, I have to use this voice, okay? So, sorry, it's that thing that's inside me every day that wants to come out. Okay, the story is by, this poem is by Sergeant Joshua Helterbrand. The soldier stood and faced God, which must always come to pass. He hoped his shoes were shining just as brightly as his brass. Step forward now, you soldier. How shall I deal with you? Have you always turned the other cheek to my church, or have you been true? The soldier squared his shoulders and said, no, Lord, I guess I ain't. Because those of us who carry guns can't always be saints. I've had to work most Sundays, and at times my talk was tough. And sometimes I've been violent because the world is awfully rough. I never took a penny that wasn't mine to keep, though I worked a lot of overtime when the bills got just too steep. And I never passed a cry for help, though at times I shook with fear, and sometimes, God forgive me, I wept unmanly tears. I know I don't deserve a place among the people here. They never wanted me around except to calm their fears. If you have a place for me here, Lord, it needn't be grand. I never expected or had too much, but if you don't, I'll understand. There was silence all around the throne where the saints had often trod, as the soldier waited quietly for the judgment of his God. Step forward now, you soldier. You were born your burdens well. Walk peacefully on heaven's streets. You've done your time in hell.
Thank you, JP. And I just invite you to take just a moment of silence to absorb those words and that reality. And then we'll move ahead. So just a moment to be quiet and together.
So our program today is called Sensing Joy, and it gives me great joy to introduce our speaker. Karen Van Fossan graduated from United Theological Seminary? There's a Y missing. Of the Twin Cities in 2015, and has been serving as minister for Bismarck-Mandan UU congregation for over a year. She is a foster mom, pastoral counselor, and advocate for children and families. Welcome, Karen.
So the trouble with this topic is that I was not in a very good mood when it came time to actually prepare for this topic. So honestly, I will confess I did not feel that joyful. So then I told myself all the things I should feel joyful about. Then I felt guilty for failing to feel joyful about all the things I should feel guilty about. Then I felt annoyed with myself for being so self-absorbed that I was bothered to feel guilty about something so inconsequential as my emotions. Then I felt defensive for being so annoyed with myself, since after all, I'm only human. Then I felt angry at everyone who ever gave me the impression that I couldn't just be human and was obligated, as if I wasn't human, to feel joyful 100% of the time. So then I added this subtitle to this sermon. Freeing Ourselves from the Tyranny of Joy is my new revised title, or was, of this sermon. But then I deleted it, and then I actually started writing this sermon at last. And now I have a new title altogether, which I think you're about to see. 10 plus points that I believe are true but could be false by someone who is sometimes but not always feeling joy. Okay, so number 1. Mainstream American culture really likes happiness. And I have evidence. Ta-da! Yeah, can you see those? Do you recognize any of those? Okay, so I learned some stuff about happiness and joy getting ready for this morning. Happy Birthday to You, 100 years ago, nobody was singing it. It was composed in 1926. And people sang it as they got through the Great Depression of the 30s. This big smiley face, which has been absorbed into all kinds of different advertising experiences, started in 1963, and it was around as people were dealing with the Kennedy assassination. So these icons of American happiness might seem a little bit cloying, but I'm curious. So, What a Wonderful World, the song by Louis Armstrong, was composed consciously to help people make it through even just witnessing the images of the Vietnam War, let alone the war itself. So if we had a lot of time, it might be fascinating to talk about what was going on in our culture when laugh tracks came to be. So it's the sound of laughing. It's actually past laughing that was recorded, or maybe it was never real laughing in the first place, but now when somebody says something relatively funny, from sort of funny to hilarious in a sitcom, ta-da, there's a laugh track. It'd be interesting to think what was going on when that came to be. So do you recognize these things? Say cheese. People didn't always smile for photographs. We do now. We need to be happy. It's valuable to us. And as a matter of fact, the American economy advertises happiness. These are ads that actually have the word happy or happiness or bliss in them. So Coca-Cola, open happiness. My Adidas make me happy. Cool stuff equals happiness for Wii Sports. Big, beefy bliss for McDonald's. It doubles your chances to be happy, I think, for this bra. So something like that. Anyway, okay, so it is true, I think, that a Coke or a pair of Adidas or a new bra or a Wii or a Big Mac might bring us happiness. I got new winter boots last week, and I was pretty happy about it. The trouble is, buying happiness can depend on us being unhappy with ourselves. For instance, so this one over here says, unhappy with the shape you're in, and it shows a person's midriff. This one down here says, I'm 58, but I look like I'm 38, and it's all kind of ways to remove the evidence of being 58 and having some life experience. And then here, I think is meant to be sort of a commentary on itself, but no HP sauce, no happy. So a few years ago, I have very few quotes in life memorized, and I should pick really ones that actually encourage me rather than ones that discourage me. But this is one I've managed to commit to memory, and I didn't put it up there, I'm just gonna say it. In the 1940s, I've said this so many times, I can't imagine that anyone else wouldn't have it memorized, but in the 1940s, a person named B. Earl Puckett, who was the president of Allied Stores, which was a huge department store chain at the time, said, essentially describing what their work was. It is our job to make women unhappy with what they have. And I'm guessing it's not just women. Certainly by now it's not. And the thing is, if we're unhappy with what we have, whether it's seasoning or our own bodies and faces, we might need to keep buying to try to get happy. But I submit to you that we are actually already beautiful. Just look at us. And in case you can't see around, I'll show you a few pictures. Or actually, thank you, Claire will. So here's a number of us, and here are some more photos. Familiar faces. Some of them, as they grow up, less familiar, but you might spot them in there. So I can see for myself, and I get to see this almost every Sunday, how really beautiful you and we are. Simple beauty is everywhere. So in these next slides, I made a pact with myself after I went onto Google Images and I felt completely overwhelmed and I almost stopped writing it right here at 5, even though I was determined to go all the way through 10, that I would just use images of places I've been, simple places, simple photos that I'd taken. So here's one. Yeah. People don't even think Illinois, having come from there, is all that cool looking, but it really is. And another one. This is the Badlands. And another. A few images of the Missouri River, even in winter. Okay, so then for this next one, I admit I didn't take this picture. So maybe someday, but not yet. So this is the kind of waves that you see there are the moon, and this is the Earth rising up over the moon. It's a NASA photograph. So to find beauty, all we have to do is notice. I think I have more here. Ah. With all our senses. So these are meant to convey our various senses. Do any senses jump out at you as you look at any of these? Sound. Smell. Mm-hmm. From this one with the fire and all the chowder. Mm-hmm. Touch. Mm-hmm. What was that?
It makes me feel a community, a fire.
Community, yeah.
It's not a sense, but.
Well, the seventh sense, we just discovered it. Mm-hmm.
Happy pain.
What was that?
Happy pain.
Happy pain? Yeah. Mm-hmm. This little guy up here has such an intense look. That was the best photo I could find in my files for just vision. So we know about sight and sound and smell and taste and touch, and now we've affirmed a sense of community. There's also a sixth sense that you may have heard about, proprioception, which I think does actually connect to the sense of community. It's the sense of position and movement, so that it's when we're moving through space, whether we're dancing here spontaneously this morning, or even just sitting here now, moving in our chairs, or feeling our position to one another, that's relying on our proprioception, that sixth sense. So sometimes feeling joy takes practice and attention, like seeing birds. Okay, I didn't take any of these pictures. But I put them all here because of a story that I have not been able to track down the origin of, but I believe very strongly that I heard it, about a woman who had been kidnapped and she was being brutalized, and she'd figured out a way in her dank dungeon-like place that she was going to end her life. And that's pretty understandable considering what she was going through. And just as she was making this plan and almost bringing it to pass, a bird, maybe looking like one of these, just lit on the windowsill outside the bars. And she decided that's what life is about, and she was going to live it. And she actually survived and came to tell the story, even though I can't say her name, but someday I look forward to finding that story and tracking it down. Even so, feeling unhappy is not a failure. The very same senses that show us joy also show us pain and longing and loss. We all have these pictures in our minds. I didn't want to overwhelm you in yours with mine. In fact, we have no obligation to feel joy. We have no obligation to feel anything in particular. Feelings are, after all, just feelings. They're not the meaning of life, though they can show us what has meaning for us. I like to think of feelings as roommates, something like these three. So some of my roommates, some of my feelings I really like to hang out with, and there are others I hope don't get on my perch with me, but I need to figure out how to coexist with them and make some boundaries with them if need be. Still, sometimes joy comes to find us. So this next picture, I promise I did really happen spontaneously. I did not pose it thinking this would be great to share with you. So just imagine when this spontaneously happened, when my honorary granddaughter happened to choose this book, which we'll show you in a second, from the stack on my back seat. I don't know if you can see over here, but it says, "We should all be feminists." And she was really reading it. So today, it is our hope that joy will come to find you, if even a little bit. So I will close with a short story from my experience, and we're going to give you a chance to sense something that we believe is connected to joy. And then hopefully we'll have a chance to hear a little bit from you. This past week at the camp, for the first time ever, I've been hearing about this water ceremony and hearing about it and feeling really a sense of longing, and I finally got to participate in it, and it was a very simple ceremony, and it essentially involved walking down to the river. It's a women's ceremony, and men also have a role, and two-spirit people also have a role. Walking down to the river and touching the water and making prayers and meditations and singing together in a sense of connectedness to one another and the water. So yes, in that spirit, we have some water. In fact, it comes from the Missouri River, and we got it out of our own faucets right here. So we'll just bring this to you, and you're welcome to just look at it or touch it, and we'll have. So sensing life, opening our senses to joy when we can. Thank you.
For our closing words, I have a quote from Thich Nhat Hanh. Yes, there is tremendous suffering all over the world, but knowing this need not paralyze us. If we practice mindful breathing, mindful walking, mindful sitting, and working in mindfulness, we can try our best to help. Thank you.